Yo, what's poppin'? It's Tommathan. We have Power Ranking Monday for week 2 of the Countdown Cup qualifiers. I'm doing it a little differently now from how I used to do it because I am actually going to move these teams around like live, which I wasn't doing for some reason. Starting at the bottom, of course, as you can see with the East region, I do not like this team. But yeah. So before I get into the kerfuffle of the East, once we get up higher, like this video if you like it. Subscribe for more content like this if you enjoy it. I do try to upload daily. And yeah, so East Region, Hangzhou Spark. They look bad still. I thought, you know what, they're gonna have some life to them now. They brought in Bernard like I wanted. They stopped just one trick in Gouchway. Great decision. Bernard's a much better look for them. But it's still not enough. You're still relying on Shai far too much, especially when you put him on the Sombra. He cannot carry the same way he can on Sojourn on Sombra. It's just not possible. Alpha E has not stepped up to the plate since the halfway point in the season, really. It feels like he hasn't improved as much compared to some of the other Genjis around him, or the Tracers, because he's on that too. And it just like he's not carrying them enough, and the backline is not carrying enough. Teru's, I think's done fine. I think Teru's been at least a side grade to Irony at worst. He's been hitting some good sleep darts specifically that I enjoy, but Neko is an absolute black hole on this team. Yeah, he's improved a little bit from week 1, but that's an extremely low bar, and it's like he's being drastically outperformed by every single main support in the Eastern region by a lot, for sure. Like it's not even close. And I just this team's in so much trouble come play-ins. Play-ins are only 18 days away. They play this week, then they have a bye week or like a skip week because all of APAC's not playing in 2 weeks, and then that Friday they're playing again. So it's like they have to figure it out, and they have to figure it out kind of soon because they are running out of time. And then you won't have, and then you just miss playoffs. It'd be a damn shame for this team to miss playoffs. But right now, all signs are pointing to them absolutely falling down a ditch. And it's like, what more can you do? They need to enable Shy more. They get rid of the Sombra entirely because he was giving them fight wins. He was actually doing as much as he could on that Sombra. Just put him on the Sojourn, put him on the Ash if you have to. Do whatever you need to do. Enable Shy to carry this team because right now it looks like you have no chance in hell unless Shy does it all. And above them is just going to be the Shanghai Dragons. You know, almost got 3-0'd by them. It is true, but they pulled out the reverse sweep at the very end. And Shanghai just feel a little off as well. It's like the Zarya comp that they're playing isn't that great. Fleta is struggling. Yeah, he did come alive a little bit against the Spark to his credit, but still not nearly as much as some of the other Tracers that are performing really well, like Choi Se-won, Becky, for example. Those two come to mind, and it's like just play Who Are You. It's not like the Genji is bad. You see teams enjoying the Genji a lot. Charge play the Genji a lot. Chengdu play the Genji a lot. There's just no reason not to. Like, you have Who Are You there. He's an X factor you can have on this team. You just put him in. You should perform better. I would expect you to perform better. Izayaki had a fantastic game against the Spark as well. Izayaki and Lip are like the two members that are really holding Shanghai together because it's not like Void is playing exceptionally well. He wasn't even playing exceptionally well last stage. But it's like this team, it shouldn't fall apart like this, but it feels like no matter which tank you put in, something is going to be wrong with this roster, one way or the other. And I think they really do need Who Are You if they want to continue to play well. But maybe at the same time, I understand, you know what, you don't have anything to play for at this point. You're locked in second. Let Fleta just cook out. Let him maybe gain a little confidence back if you have to. It's better than not playing because Who Are You is going to be in that hyperbolic time chamber. He's going to be good to go for playoffs if you need him. So for now, I completely understand letting Fleta try and maybe get a bit better in his final 2 matches of the season before we go over to the playoffs. But it's not a great look for them, and maybe they're trying to figure it out now. It's better to figure it out now than later because you don't have any opportunities to figure it out later. So I understand what Shanghai's doing. If that is their plan, I respect it, but they don't look good right now. Above them, this is where it gets a little weird. Above them is definitely the Fusion. 100% the Fusion. It can't really be anyone else. So this week they beat Shanghai and then lose to the Charge. And it was a pretty good game against the Charge. It was decently close, but the Reaper comp that they do look better at than the Charge with the Zarya, they weren't able to play it as well because it's not as good in the mirror. So I think Philly is still a better team into teams that aren't playing the Zarya. But whenever you get the mirror matchup, Charge definitely looked like they knew what they were doing a bit better. I do question playing, like, they definitely had the upper hand because Charge were playing Jimmy sometimes, and Jimmy didn't have a fantastic game against Philly. But if Jimmy was popping off that specific match, it could have been much more one-sided towards the Charge. It didn't feel like anyone wasn't really not. It didn't feel like anyone was playing had an off game on Philly. Is what I'm trying to say. So I feel like Charge definitely have more potential there as well. Um, but they do look solid. They are still a bit scary with that Reaper comp specifically, and I think that they're not in a bad shape, but they're not untouchable. They're clearly not untouchable, but they're still a threat. They're nothing to be sleeping on, you know. And then above them is where it gets kind of weird because the Hunters have played both the Charge and the Valiant, and the Charge and Valiant play next week to largely decide who is going to make the play-ins. There is a situation where Valiant beat the Charge and they still don't make it, but it is looking like that game will be a key component to decide who makes it. Whereas Chengdu has played both of these teams, both to 5 maps. They beat the Charge but lost to the Valiant this week. So result wise, it should go with the results, it should be like Charge, then Hunters, then Valiant. Is how the results should be. But the vibes that I'm getting here, I am personally leaning towards the Charge on top because I think the Zarya comp Piggy is an absolute force combined with Choice A1. And just a matter of will Jimmy show up in that game. Even against the Philly Fusion, Jimmy didn't really show up, but they were still good enough to win. If Jimmy shows up there, it's a whole different game. If Jimmy shows up against these two, it's different. And that's the first time he hasn't shown up in 4 games. The other 3, he was doing quite well. So, well, he didn't do very well against Seoul, to be honest. So maybe he's just had an off week entirely. So if Jimmy has an off week, then Charge is for sure below these two teams. But if you average it, it probably does look like that, right? Because how can you justify putting Charge above the Hunters after a loss? I think the matchup between the Valiant and the Charge will come down to map pick, just not map pick, but whichever maps they get dealt, because they don't get to choose them. Whichever maps they get dealt will heavily influence that match. Because if you get more points where the Zarya comp can shine, I do like Charge on the Zarya comp more. Especially on push, I think Charge, if they get to map 4, they're going to map 5. Or they're winning. Because with how they've been performing on push with Valiant, just bringing in Dia and playing the Reaper, it feels like the Charge should just have the edge on them. So I'm kind of talking about these 3 teams all at once, but it's because they are so... I can't speak. They're so close together that it's like... It's really difficult. The Hunters, they looked a little bit better than they were supposed to off rip because you play the Spark and you don't expect the Spark to look that bad. No, they didn't look great, but they looked okay. And then they beat the Charge, who were looking good. So, but now like you lose both of those games this week, right? Am I mistaken? I don't think so. Yeah, you lose to Valiant. Who was the other match? I can't see it. You lose to Seoul too, and it wasn't like a particularly super close match against Seoul. They do take a map, but it's like this seems like the way, especially with how good Becky has been for the Valiant, and Easy Han's been solid too. But Becky has been a true X factor and playing so well on the Tracer and Echo. But it also comes down to, well, if you get a map like King's Row where the Tracer and Echo isn't as good, it should be a Charge win there as well. So I'm leaning like this is how it should be using the results of this stage, and I kind of agree. It just depends on, was Jimmy underperforming this stage, or this week, or was he overperforming the other two? Is the question. And if you average that, this looks good, and it's really hard to argue with it. Because all these backlines have been having a great stage. There's nothing really wrong with any of these backlines. They've all been having a great time. I would say I maybe rate the Valiant's backline a bit below Hunters in Charge, but Molly has been just as good, so it's not really worth anything. It's a pretty negligible difference, if anything. Just because Langza does get caught out sometimes, especially on the Brig, and they tend to opt for the Brig to help Becky out on the Echo a bit more. So they also lose the Zarya mirror if Becky doesn't pop off. So Valiant is much more reliable, much more reliant on Becky, while I think the Charge is more reliable. So my heart tells me to do this. That's what my heart says. So I'm going to do that. Just because I love Choice A1. He's like definitely like been my like favorite player this season, probably. Or very close. And then it's going to be Soul on top, moving past this middle bit. This middle bit, I normally don't put tier breaks, but like this is where that's like, well, Philly is in there, but Philly's just definitely at the bottom. But anyway, Soul Dynasty look undeniably like the top seed. No one's going to even come close to them right now. Every part of them are clicking. Smurf especially has impressed me with how flexible he's been able to be. It's been really good. Fitz has been solid. I don't think he's been the same level as like I don't know, a Lip or a Shy even. But his Sombra is definitely like a cut above the rest right now. It looks like his Sombra to be the best in the thing. But if he goes over to the hit scan, which he doesn't too often anymore, so I guess you can ignore that part. Fitz is definitely the best Sombra in APAC this stage. It's just that you have Lip and Shy trying to carry their team, so they're not playing more of a supportive role. So while Fitz is, and it makes the Sombra look a lot better there. But anyway, yeah, this is gonna be my East region for sure. I feel pretty happy about that. Okay, so going over to NA before my notes have just disappeared on my phone. Starting at the bottom, I guess I didn't mean to need any notes for this because at the bottom it has to be Paris, pretty obviously. I still am a little bit impressed by how they performed in that week one. They don't play week two, so there's no new update on Paris. But like, they're Paris. They're Paris. They I just don't think they stack up to the rest of this league right now. Simply put, their backlines like looked okay. Cry actually impressed me a bit, but it's Paris. And going at number second bottom 12, Toronto Defiant. Like how? Oh my lord! You lose to the New York Excelsior. You lose to the Vancouver Titans. You do beat Chalk though. They beat Chalk. So here's the thing about that. I don't really care that they beat Chalk. It just doesn't. I don't care really. Chalk didn't look like they had it. They had no clue what was going on there. They looked like they got it together halfway through their match against Atlanta, but like that Chalk that they played was not very good, and it doesn't matter. I don't care. They're still the second bottom team here. They just don't have it together. He has to do too much right now. I don't like the backline looks good. Papa isn't the kind of carry Zarya that a lot of these teams are finding success with, like the charge on the other side. Piggy being that super carry, Papa's not that. So he's not really finding that there. He's built very aggressive still, but he's not actually doing the most work. And then finale, I don't know, maybe you could put it although instead more of the time, opt more for the Genji comp because I feel like it might be more beneficial than the Tracer in a lot of these aspects. I don't know. Toronto's a weird team. They're also looking to be in big trouble going to the play-ins because they've lost their playoff spot essentially. They play Houston, Florida next week, or not next week, in 2 weeks, and it's like they're probably going to go 1-1 to keep being mid because you have to go 12-12 on this season. But they're in trouble. They're in trouble. Above them is going to be the Vancouver Titans who beat them 3-1, and it's like Aspire. If Aspire can just win. King had one of his best games to date. Uh, it's like they also brought up false. Love that. I think they definitely need to do that. It was not sustainable to run the just mirror on Doomfist Orisa, and I guess it doesn't matter how sustainable it is because they're out of the play-ins now. They're basically Boston basically secured that final spot. I think they have actually. I think play-ins are just like run and done. You know who's in them now for the most part, or you know who's out of them at least. So it's like good on them for getting this win at the very end, but like too little, too late for Vancouver, unfortunately. And they are going to look to play spoiler against whoever they play next. And you know what? They played spoiler for Toronto, so they look good. Too bad that they didn't have a good first half, really. And then it's going to be New York, who just had Yaki and Flora absolutely pop offs. Yaki specifically against the Gladiators. Like, that was a brutal time. And it was like they were just going blow for blow, and whoever was getting the most value in just a raw dive was winning. And Yaki had an absolute spectacular time. And it's a damn shame that more teams didn't decide, you know what, we're just going to run it down against New York. Because if that happened more of the season, I guarantee you New York would be in a better spot. If you don't give them any sort of coaching, because they clearly haven't had very much. Their entire game plan is Yaki carry. But if you let that game plan go forth, it looks pretty good. So New York, a threat if you let them be, and glad to let them be. They still managed to win out in the end. But Pelon on Zarya, not inspirational. The whole you still have Ansu J on ping. Double flex support's all right. One actually is performing pretty decently. It'll be interesting to see if he has a spot in the league next season, and if so, with who, or if he's going to end up back in contenders. Because players on bad teams sometimes they just don't get a second shot, and that's unfortunate. Just because we don't really know how good Ho One is based on this performance with the New York Excelsior this season. It's very difficult to tell. Um, so I don't know. Same with Kellen, I would say, because Kellen shouldn't be your only tank. Just shouldn't be. And maybe you can say there's not a spot for tanks that can't be your only tank anymore. That's a statement that maybe has some validity. But regardless, New York Excelsior look pretty good if you let them. Above New York is going to be the London Spitfire. They did not play this week, right? No, they did play this week. I'm trolling. They just got absolutely dominated by the Gladiators in Dallas Field. I erased it from my memory because MVP Hottie got absolutely rolled and smoked in the matchup both times. Like not even close. Um, it's not. It was not good. And honestly, we kind of expected this. They didn't look too strong coming out of week one. Yeah, they had a win, but it's like, or yeah, they had two wins because they played bottom teams. They played Vancouver Paris, but it's like this team. I still don't enjoy not having Sparker. And Sparker was the true carry of this team to me, 100%. I think Sparker much better MVP candidate than Hottie personally. I'll probably make a video on that tomorrow if I'm not playing Overwatch 2 all day. I'll make a video on it tonight, maybe, and upload it tomorrow. Getting ahead of it. But I don't know. I just think you don't have Sparker. You don't have that extra factor that you can kind of run. You can't play the Reinhardt. Hottie on the Winston, not elite. I don't think that should be a hot. Well, I was about to say a hot topic, a hot take. But it's like he's just on the ball sometimes. No, he wasn't really on the ball sometimes. They brought it out a little bit in week one, if I remember. But like the Winston's just not there. I kind of would be interested to see them play Poco a bit. That'd be interesting. But I don't know what Lennon's doing. Backbone Widow, it seems to be doing things though. You know who I'm actually very disappointed in Shax. Now that I'm here, I'm very disappointed in Shax. I wanted him to step up and be that guy on the Tracer, and I thought, you know what, he gets his playtime. He can actually do this. He's a core member of the team this stage, and it hasn't happened. And I am absolutely floored. I was so ready for Shax to be that guy for London, and he just hasn't been. And it's tragic. It is tragic. It's one of my favorite players to watch back on the Valiant when he was there. It's a damn shame. Above them is going to be Florida. Florida is the team that did not get to play this week. So not too much to say on them after they lose to the Gladiators and then they lost to Boston in week one. So there's no real update. It'll be interesting to see what they come out and do. They had someone on the Zarya a lot, which Punk was easily able to navigate back in week one. So we'll see if maybe they still have more Zarya on the cards or do they have more Winston gameplay? Because that is what someone's best hero has been consistently. It's been the Winston. Maybe he has a diva. Maybe he's cooking up a diva. He has been able to be at least suitable on characters that he's flexed to, despite being a maintained player at heart. So I'm excited to see what Florida coaching staff is cooking up there. I'm sure Gunba and McGravy have something in the oven, but not too much more to really say about them there. Above them is going to be Washington, who had kind of a turbulent week as far as all things are considered. They beat New York, but they lose very handedly to Atlanta. It wasn't very close. And it's like, Atlanta just played a really sound game. I don't think that really says as much about the Justice as it does Atlanta. Because, like, Justice, they only moved down, what? Oh, they moved down a good few spots. Like, that's like 3 spots. Or 2 spots. They moved down 2 spots from my last power rankings above me. And it just kind of feels like, I don't know, they didn't have any more to give. They didn't really innovate in any other way. They're playing the horse still. I don't love the Kalios horse. It feels like he's just running at them. And they're back on that aggressive stuff where they're just like, I'm going to run into the back line. We'll see what happens. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes your whole team dies behind you. And that's just the Kalios lifestyle, I guess. So, sure. Their wins that they have feel not great because they beat the Shock, even though Shock was like not great at that point and still fielding the Sombra. I'm a little concerned about where Washington could be. They could go below Florida, maybe, but I think it's going to be another case where it's like they don't have a second backup strategy. If they don't win with their initial strategy, they're just going to lose very hard. And above them is going to be Boston, despite not playing this week. They looked really good week one. I still have full faith in Punk. I still have full faith in Victoria Valentine. They look great. MCD did do a little trolling in one of my last Overwatch 1 games, so he was on the Tracer, or the Ash. wasn't great. So MCD on the Ash, keep them off the Ash Boston. But like, it'll be it's Boston. It's gonna be interesting to watch. Boston's always a fun team. And above Boston, this is where I'm gonna put Atlanta. I think this is a very safe spot for Atlanta to be at because I think they look really good. I feel like Speedily still has more to give because in their match against the San Francisco Shock, where Shock were able to turn it around and reverse sweep, Speedily on the Echo, the first two maps, pounding, absolutely pounding, just rolling. And then Proper goes over to the Sojourn, and it just stops. And it feels like Speedily continued to play the Echo on that last Oasis map specifically, and he just didn't adapt to what was happening. So before that, going crazy, and then suddenly they like prep for him a bit better, and he never actually changes his gameplay. He continues to do what was working before, but what was working before isn't going to work now. I think Speedily is going to be the key for Atlanta, especially in these playoffs moving forward, to actually propel them higher. Because as it is now, Venom's going really crazy. Hawk is exceptional at the Diva, whatever he wants to play, he's there. And the backline of Vigilante UV is extremely cool to see. Like, I'm very happy that Vigilante really bolsters. The one weak point this roster really had was double flex support. Because you want UV on the back all the time, pretty much. So I think Atlanta look great. But I want Speedily to kick it into extra gear before I put them any higher than where they are right now. And above them is going to be Shock because they just got the reverse sweep. Now, let me hear me out. This is based on the 3 match against Atlanta. Yeah, they lose to Defiant, who is down at number 2. But this is different now. They bring in Striker, so this lets them play. As I said in my Striker video, which I don't know how many people. Well, there was actually a lot of people watching. There was a lot of comments on that one too. So yeah. Anyways, Striker video. I said, you know what? They're going to play Striker on the Tracer and Proper on the Sojourn. And that's what they end up doing, and that's the look that looks good for them. So I think they continue to do that moving forward. That has to be what they need to do, I think. And we'll see. But they look really good on it. Because you let Proper do his thing. Striker, he still has the Tracer mechanics. He's not exceptional. He's not a top 5 Tracer anymore. He's not that guy. He sat out the entire season, didn't even play in contenders, nothing like that. But he's still good enough. Beside Proper, he'll get the job done. I'm not too concerned there. And then they look good, but it's still resting all on Proper. It's all Proper. Let's not get it twisted. He's the reason they complete that reverse sweep. But he just goes to Sojourn. Maybe he just said, "Presty, I'm playing Sojourn," and that's what happens. Who knows? But they look good with it. We'll see with more data because honestly, if you like over this entire stage, they're not very high. Right, they're somewhere down here, but those last 3 maps against Atlanta really did a lot in my eyes to put them up because I think that's more indicative of Shock moving forward in these last 2 games of the qualifiers than any of those previous 3.5. So we'll see. And anyway, above them, gonna be Houston. So Houston Outlaws, they didn't play this week either. They're just kind of here because yeah, they played good against that one Shock team, and they look pretty good when they're playing the Sombra and after they stopped playing Doge. So I think Dante moving forward will be fine on the Zarya, on the Diva. They didn't play very much Zarya, if I remember correctly, against the Shock, so it'll be interesting to see if Dante has one now, or what they were cooking up this week. But they're just going to stay here because I can't really move them lower, and I'm not going to put Shock above them, so they're just going to stay here. And then finally, it's the LA Gladiators and the Dallas Fuel. But Dallas are a cut above the rest. I can put a tier break here if I wanted, but who cares about tier breaks? Dallas Fuel are definitely, undoubtedly the best team in NA with Hanbin on the Zarya. They bring in Fearless on the Winston. He looked good too. They were the first team that I actually noticed playing the Circuit Royale Zarya. And some other teams in APAC specifically have done that as well. So it's interesting. I thought they were just doing that because they were just playing against Vancouver. And they were just oh, we'll just run the Zarya comp. Why switch up anything? But it might have actually been a genuine strategy now that we see that other teams are actually doing that too. And I don't think anyone else in NA has done that, unless I'm remembering wrong. Maybe someone did. I wouldn't be surprised if someone did. But it's Dallas. Dallas have Hanbin leading the charge. He looks great. And you have the Gladiators, who had that really shaky game against New York, where they just said, we're going to try and out-carry Yaki, basically. And it works in the end, but it's far closer than it should have been. But it's who else can you really put there? You're not going to put anyone else there. You're not putting Houston or Shock or Atlanta above Gladiators. I don't think so. They, I don't know. Gladiators look good again. Two makes a huge difference on this roster, of course. I am a little concerned that they. I'm not concerned, but I wonder if you were going to play the Zarya comp on some maps. Did they play the Zarya on circuit? I think they might have. Maybe that's the team I was thinking of. I'm maybe not. But anyway, I'm a little concerned that you don't play space even on maps where you don't switch off Zarya. Now I understand putting Reiner in for the flexibility. And it's not like Zarya is really Space's character per se. He's much more of a Diva, Roadhog, Sigma kind of guy. But it's like maybe that would have been better, but I kind of trust them just playing Reiner at the same time. So I'm not too torn up about it. I think they're both fine decisions. Um, but it's like, I don't know. They look good. They could look better, but they look good. I don't know if they like Dallas fuel level, especially because like the Zarya comp, Dallas is just a cut above the rest in NA specifically. But we'll see. Anyway, that's gonna be it for the video. That's the power rankings right there. Like this video, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and deuces.